She laughed, that ugly kind of laugh that sounds rehearsed. Not because it was funny, not because it was charming, because she knew I was standing there. I hadn't said a word. I didn't need to. I was holding her coat. Yeah, I stood at the edge of that over-decorated banquet hall, gripping her trench coat like some half-forgotten assistant while she leaned into a man I'd never seen before and whispered something behind her wine glass. And then came the laugh. Sharp, perfectly timed, targeted, like a blade through warm skin. The worst part? I laughed too. Yeah, me, Theo Winslow, professional pushover. I laughed because I didn't want to make a scene, because I didn't want to be that guy, because part of me still believed, stupidly, that it was harmless. Then she touched his wrist. Not his shoulder. Not his elbow. His wrist. It's always the wrist. The quietest kind of intimacy. I only know that because I remember when she used to touch mine like that. She said something I couldn't hear, but I saw his eyebrows lift. His mouth curled into that sideways grin men do when they think they've won something. And then she said it. You're the one. I blinked. Not once. Not twice. A long, hard blink, like maybe I'd hallucinated it. But no. She said it again, laughing softer this time. I'm serious. You're the one. And suddenly, the coat in my hand felt 40 pounds heavier. I stepped forward, not because I had a plan, but because I couldn't feel my feet. Walked right up to him. To both of them. She looked at me like I was a candle she forgot she lit. I handed him the coat. Thought you might need this, I said. He glanced at it, confused. She froze. It's waterproof, I added. Good for walking home in the rain. I turned and walked out. It wasn't raining yet, but I was already soaked. I didn't make it to the sidewalk before the nausea kicked in. I stepped out of the banquet hall and onto the marble stairs, holding onto the railing like I was 80 years old. My mouth was dry, but my palms were sweating through my shirt cuffs. The lights of the city felt too bright. People were laughing behind me. Partygoers who didn't know they'd just witnessed a quiet funeral. I wasn't angry yet. I was embarrassed. There's a difference. I stood outside the venue, pretending to check my phone like I had somewhere better to be. That's what men like me do. We fake composure. We chew on our own pride until it turns to paste. 3 minutes passed. Maybe 4. Then I heard her heels. Click, click, click. Too fast to be casual. Too slow to be urgent. She stopped behind me. Didn't say anything. So I said, "You forgot your coat." She responded like she'd rehearsed it, like this was some dumb, isolated misunderstanding. Theo, that wasn't what it sounded like. I turned, just slightly, enough to see her from the corner of my eye. Her face was flushed, not from guilt, from being caught off script. You called him the one, Mira. It was a joke. I laughed. This time, it was mine, the hollow kind. You never called me that. Not once. She crossed her arms, coatless, defenseless. You're twisting this. No, you already twisted it. I'm just trying to recognize the shape. She stepped closer. Her perfume was different tonight. Not the usual lavender and cedar I bought her every December. This one was heavier. Something floral, but artificial, like a scent you borrow from someone else. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in weeks, maybe months. And all I saw was someone who had already left me. The worst kind of leaving, the kind where the body stays but everything else is gone. So who is he? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Then, like it wasn't even worth hiding, she said, Nolan. Nolan. Of course it was Nolan. The guy with the retriever. The one she said talks too much. The one whose name she accidentally whispered in her sleep 2 weeks ago, and then gaslit me about it, until I thought I was going insane. Nolan. And then she said something that splintered me wide open. I didn't plan for this, Theo. But he listens. That's when I knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. It was an avalanche that had been creeping down the mountain for months. And I'd been standing at the bottom, eyes closed, thinking the snow would melt before it hit me. It didn't. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. So I just nodded. Then I turned and walked toward the end of the block, leaving her standing under the glow of a streetlight, still trying to play innocent in a story she'd already written the ending to. But she didn't know something. Not yet. I hadn't come to that party alone. She didn't see her at first. That's what made it perfect. While Mira stood beneath the streetlight, fumbling with the tattered pieces of her alibi, she didn't notice the woman sitting quietly in a parked car across the street. Passenger side. Window halfway down. No music. Just watching. Her name's Rowan. Not my girlfriend. Not a rebound. just someone who knew enough about pain to recognize mine. We met at a grief support group, of all places. She lost her sister. I lost my marriage. Well, technically, I was still losing it, in slow motion. But that night, Rowan offered me something no one else had in months: clarity. She saw through the fog I had wrapped myself in. She didn't try to fix me, just handed me a flashlight and said, "You don't have to stay in the dark unless you like it there." When I told her Mira invited me to the company party, she said, "Do you want to go?" I told her I didn't know. Then she asked, "Do you want to go alone?" So we drove together. She stayed in the car while I went inside, promising to be there in case I needed anything. I didn't realize how much I'd need someone until I came out shattered and speechless. So as I walked toward the car, Mira followed. At first, she probably thought I was just being dramatic, playing the victim card like I always did in her eyes. She called out my name once, then louder. When I didn't turn around, she jogged to catch up. And that's when she saw the car door open and Rowan step out. I will never forget the look on Myra's face. Not jealousy, not even anger. No, it was panic, a flicker of something ancient. Not because she thought I'd moved on. She never believed I could, but because she recognized Rowan. They had met. Once. Briefly. At a New Year's Eve party 2 years ago. Mira dismissed her then. Called her too quiet, too intense. Said she had the kind of face that stored secrets. Apparently, she wasn't wrong. Rowan didn't say a word. She just leaned against the car like she belonged there. Mira froze in her heels, her mouth slightly open, like she was about to say something but hadn't decided whether to lie or cry. And then Rowan spoke. "I was wondering how long it would take you to get caught." Mira blinked. "Excuse me." Rowan didn't flinch. "Nolan's wife called me last week." I didn't know that part either. Mira looked at me, eyes wide, searching for a safe place to land. You talked to her?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Rowan continued, casually cruel in the most poetic way. "Turns out Myra's been very busy. Corporate retreats. Late meetings. That little weekend, she said, was a conference in Denver. Funny, because Nolan's wife said he had a sprained ankle that weekend. Couldn't even fly. But Mira sure did." My breath hitched. I hadn't known that either. That was new. Mira turned pale. She took a step back, her lips quivering with rage or fear, maybe both. "This is insane," she said. "You're stalking me now? You're plotting against me with strangers?" Rowan tilted her head. "Strange how you call people strangers after you cheat on your husband." Then Mira looked at me. That raw, pleading look. "Theo, come on. You can't actually believe this." I should have said something strong, something final. But all I could manage was, "Don't talk to me like I'm still yours." That broke something in her. I saw it happen, a tiny collapse behind the eyes. The kind of collapse that happens when you realize you've run out of lies to stand on. I walked around to the driver's side, got in, shut the door. Rowan followed. As we pulled away, I watched Mira shrink in the rearview mirror, her arms limp at her sides, like she couldn't even figure out whether to chase us or disappear. And I thought that was the end. But the end had its own timeline, and it was far from finished with me. Sleep didn't come that night. I laid on Rowan's couch, staring at the cracked ceiling, playing the scene outside the gallery over and over again like a broken reel. Myra's face, her silence, Rowan's calm destruction. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her lips moving, just barely, mouthing that sentence again. "You're the one, Nolan." It echoed like a threat, not a confession. Rowan brought me tea around 3 a.m. We didn't talk much. She sat beside me in a silence that felt more comforting than any of Myra's hollow apologies ever had. I didn't cry, not because I didn't want to, but because whatever was left inside me had turned to stone hours ago. At 8:14 the next morning, someone rang the buzzer. I was still in my dress shirt, unbuttoned and wrinkled, lying there like a man who had just survived his own funeral. Rowan peeked through the curtain, then turned to me slowly. "It's her." I didn't move. "She's not alone," she added. That got me up. I stepped toward the door, heart thudding. I had no idea what she was capable of anymore. Not because I thought she'd get violent or dramatic, but because I no longer knew what version of Mira I was going to get. The cold executive? The weepy victim? The gaslighting artist who could rewrite a timeline in real time? I cracked the door open, and there she was, dressed like she hadn't slept either. No makeup, hair pulled back, coat thrown over mismatched clothes. But she wasn't what shocked me. Next to her stood a short man in his 50s, holding a brown leather folder, and looking extremely uncomfortable. "This is Dennis," she said, skipping pleasantries entirely. Our mediator." "Mediator?" I blinked. "You brought a lawyer to my friend's apartment?" "He's not a lawyer," Dennis said awkwardly, flipping open the folder like it would somehow make him disappear. "I specialize in conflict resolution and separation counseling. Mira called me at 6 this morning. She thought it might help you both communicate in a more constructive format." Rowan let out a laugh from the kitchen, short, dry, and unmistakably real. I stared at Mira. "You cheated on me in front of 100 people, then brought a stranger to my door the next morning to help manage my tone?" "I'm trying," she said quickly, voice shaky. "You said last night that I always twist things. I'm trying not to twist it. I'm trying to handle this like adults." "Like adults?" "Right." Dennis awkwardly tried to hand me a one-page document. I didn't take it. "What is this?" "Temporary terms," Mira said, eyes darting between mine. "For time apart. For boundaries. It's not legal, just suggestions. Just so we both have space to process this." "And how long have you had this ready?" I asked. Her face flushed. That half-second of hesitation told me everything. This wasn't a reaction. It was a backup plan. A premeditated, carefully packaged exit she must have drafted weeks ago in some hotel lobby while Nolan was in the shower. So I said it. "This was never about figuring it out. You already made your decision. You were just waiting to get caught so you wouldn't have to say it out loud." Dennis started to interject. "I think what Theo's expressing here is..." I cut him off with a raised hand. "Dennis, please go wait in your car." To my surprise, he did. Then it was just me and Mira. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, "I thought if I didn't control it, it would all spin out." "You mean the truth?" I asked. "No," she said, staring down at the sidewalk. "You." Something about that hit harder than anything else. She wasn't trying to protect us. She was trying to protect her version of me. The quiet one, the forgivable one, the one who wouldn't make waves, the one who stayed. But that version of me had died last night on a sidewalk under fluorescent lights. "You need to leave," I said. "I want to explain." "You already did," I said. "I just didn't listen the first 100 times you did it without words." She looked up at me one last time. There was something unfamiliar in her eyes now. Not love, not guilt. Maybe regret. Maybe relief. She turned, walked down the steps, and got into Dennis's car. And I watched the woman I married disappear into the morning light with a mediator she didn't even need. But she'd left something behind, and it wasn't clothes or memories. It was a voicemail I hadn't listened to yet. One from Nolan's wife. After Mira and her conflict resolution puppet drove away, I just stood in the doorway, phone still in hand, heart still in some crumpled position that didn't feel entirely survivable. The street had gone quiet again. Rowan was in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through her phone, giving me the space I didn't ask for, but needed anyway. I sat down on the arm of the couch, opened my call history, and there it was. Voicemail, 2 minutes, 13 seconds, unknown number. I almost didn't press play. I'd been avoiding it since the night before. Part of me was afraid it would just be more noise, another angry spouse venting about cheaters in their ecosystem. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. So is pain. Together, they make you do stupid things, like press play when your hands are still shaking. It started with silence. Then a soft inhale. "Hi. I'm not sure if this is Theo, but if it is, I need you to know I'm not calling to scream or blame you for any of this. I promise." Her voice was gentle, tired, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones and doesn't leave. "My name is Maylene. I'm Nolan's wife. Or I guess was. I've known about Mira for a while now. At first, I thought it was just emotional. Texts, phone calls. I found the hotel receipts later." She paused for a second, then continued with something I didn't expect. "But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because something Mira told Nolan made me really uncomfortable. And I think you deserve to know." I sat up straighter. My breath caught. There was a tone shift in her voice, a sharp edge under the sorrow. "She told him you were sick. Not physically, mentally. She said you'd been unstable lately, that you were paranoid, that you made up stories, that you'd had an episode." My stomach dropped. She said if anything came out, he should just know she was dealing with a situation at home. She was planting seeds. Quiet ones. Preparing people. I think she was setting up a version of you that no one would believe. I didn't move. I just stared at the opposite wall, numb. "I'm sorry. I know this probably sounds insane, but I figured if she could lie to him like that, there's no telling what else she's twisting. And if she ever tries to turn this on you, I just want you to have a voice besides your own. The message ended with her number and a soft, "Take care," the kind you say to someone standing on the edge. I didn't cry, not even then, but something inside me felt different. Not sadder, not angrier, colder, because Mira hadn't just lied. She hadn't just cheated. She'd prepared for the fallout like it was a PR crisis, like I was a problem she could get ahead of, a story to rewrite before I had the chance to speak. That's what broke me more than anything, the realization that she didn't just betray me, she discredited me. In the version she told Nolan, I was a man unraveling, a man who saw ghosts, a man you don't take seriously. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The city was waking up, unaware that my entire world had been flipped twice in 12 hours. Rowan stepped into the room behind me. "You okay?" she asked. I handed her the phone without a word. She listened. She didn't interrupt. When it ended, she set it down gently on the table and said, "You're not crazy." But that wasn't what I needed to hear. What I needed was proof. And I knew exactly where to start looking. Mira had erased parts of me from the story she told Nolan. But she'd forgotten something critical. You can't erase a person who kept everything. Mira always used to make fun of me for saving everything. Old receipts, deleted voicemails, screenshots of calendar invites, email threads from 6 months ago about what time her flight landed, just in case, I'd say. She said I was neurotic. Said I stored data like I was preparing for a courtroom I hoped would never exist. Turns out I was. After Rowan left to meet her sister for lunch, I opened my laptop and stared at the cold blue light of my desktop like it owed me something. I didn't even know where to start, just that I had to. If Mira was building a narrative behind my back, planting whispers about my mental state, turning people into unwitting character witnesses, then I needed to drag the real version of events out of the shadows before she buried me beneath her polished lies. First, I opened my phone backup folders. Mira had no idea I auto-synced my photos and texts to a private cloud, one she never had access to. The text history alone could have been a script for a slow-burn psychological thriller. There it was. A message from 4 months ago. Mira, I need to be in Denver for 2 nights, finance summit. Me, need me to help pack? Mira, no, it's fine. I'll be running the whole time anyway. But the photos she sent after that trip didn't match the weather report from Denver. One had palm trees in the background. One had a reflection in the glass window, not of her hotel room, but of someone behind her, out of focus. That someone had Nolan's posture. I would have known it anywhere. I went deeper. Found an old voicemail she left me when I missed her call last December. She was crying, saying I didn't understand the pressure she was under at work. That people expect me to be perfect. I remember feeling guilty about that voicemail. I didn't realize until now. It had come 48 hours after her first weekend away with the team. I played it again, slower this time. Something felt off. The pauses, the catch in her breath. It wasn't sadness. It was rehearsed, staged. She'd always been good at adjusting her voice for the room she was in. She once convinced a cop not to write her a ticket after running a red light because she was late to a fertility consultation. We weren't even trying to have kids. By the time I hit hour 3 of combing through messages, screenshots, and shared documents, I had enough inconsistencies to make even the most loyal friend raise their eyebrows. But it wasn't about proving she cheated anymore. Everyone already knew that. This was about proving I wasn't crazy. Because once someone plants that seed, that idea that you're unstable, emotional, unreliable, it grows. Quietly, invisibly. And by the time you realize it's taking over your life, people have already decided you're the one lying. I created a folder, titled it plainly, Truth/in case she goes nuclear. Inside it, I started building a timeline. Messages, flight receipts, her passive-aggressive texts, audio files, voicemails, call logs, calendar screenshots, even the blurry photo I had of her and Nolan at the gala, where her hand rested on his chest while she thought no one was looking. By 9 p.m., I had 57 files, each one a nail in the coffin of whatever story she was trying to build about me. And still, none of this felt like revenge. It felt like defense, like a man locking his doors, not because he wants to hurt anyone, but because he finally realized his house wasn't safe. Then, around midnight, something unexpected happened. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown, hey. I know this is random, but are you Myra's husband? My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen for a long time. And then I replied, Me, who is this? Unknown, my name's Ezra. I think we should talk. This is about Nolan. And about you. And it's urgent. I didn't sleep that night. Again. After Ezra's message, I stared at my phone for almost an hour, trying to figure out what kind of man texts a stranger in the middle of the night and says, we need to talk about Nolan. It could have been a trap, a mistake, a scam, but something about the tone, short, direct, not overly dramatic, stuck in my ribs. So I messaged him back. Me. I'm listening. Ezra. Can we meet in person? Tomorrow. Public place. I'll explain everything. Me. Where? Ezra. Lakeside Cafe. Noon. Don't bring anyone. I wasn't sure why he added that last part, but I didn't argue. The next morning, I didn't tell Rowan. I just said I had to meet someone about the situation and left it vague. She didn't press, which I appreciated. I think she knew I needed one last puzzle piece before the whole picture could finally stop haunting me in my sleep. I arrived at Lakeside Cafe 10 minutes early, ordered black coffee, sat by the window. At 12:01, a man walked in. Early 40s, dark brown skin, shaved head, long coat, laptop bag. Looked like someone who did private security or managed backstage tours. He spotted me instantly, nodded once, and came over. Ezra, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Theo. He didn't smile, didn't waste time, just reached into his coat pocket and set a phone down on the table between us. This isn't my first time having this conversation, he said, but I'm hoping it's the last. I raised an eyebrow. You're going to have to back up. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. Nolan isn't just some flirtatious finance guy. He's deliberate, strategic. He doesn't make moves without endgames. You're not the first marriage he's interfered with. I blinked. You're saying this is the pattern? Ezra nodded. More than that. He builds profiles. He picks people. I didn't interrupt. I didn't want to believe it, but something in me already did. He goes for women in strained relationships. Ambitious women. Women who are tired of carrying someone. But more importantly, he picks women whose partners can be discredited easily. I felt my pulse tighten. Why? Ezra sighed. He's a manipulator, but a sophisticated one. It's not about sex. It's about leverage. About control. I was married to one of the women he did this to 6 years ago. She left me after 2 months of mentorship with Nolan. Took half of everything. Then had a breakdown when he dumped her and ghosted. I stared at the man across from me, trying to process what I was hearing. And Mira. She fits the mold, Ezra said. But there's more. He tapped the phone. Opened a voice memo. It started with a low hum. Then voices. A man, Nolan, and a woman. Mira. I recognized her voice instantly. He'll never push back. He just folds. I think he believes it's his fault somehow. That's good, Nolan replied. If he breaks down, it'll be easier to move everything over. Tell legal he's erratic. We just need to get through this month. Then he's irrelevant. Then a long pause. You know, Mira added, voice quieter now. Almost a whisper. Sometimes I wish he would lose it. Just once. Yell. Hit something. Give me an excuse to walk out clean. Nolan laughed. That was the end of the recording. My hands were shaking on the edge of the table. Where did you get that? Ezra looked grim. Someone in his office tipped me off after my ex's situation. They didn't want to be involved, but they didn't want to stay silent either. I've been holding on to this for months, waiting to see if he'd do it again. And Mira? I asked. She knew. She knew exactly what she was doing, Ezra said. Maybe she started out vulnerable. Maybe she thought Nolan was a way out. But at some point, she made her choice. The pieces rearranged themselves in my head. Mira hadn't just betrayed me. She participated in engineering my collapse. The missing medications. The whispered concerns to our mutual friends. The carefully crafted picture of me as fragile, unstable, unmotivated. She hadn't just walked away from me. She tried to erase me first. Ezra slid a USB drive across the table. Back up everything you find. Document everything. You're not crazy, Theo. You were being conditioned to think you were. I left the cafe feeling colder than I ever had. Not because I'd lost Mira, but because I'd almost lost myself and never even saw it happening. I didn't send the audio file to Mira. I didn't blow it up on social media. I didn't call Nolan's office or drag everything into court or write some public letter to expose the betrayal in cinematic detail. That's what I thought I'd do. In those first hours after Ezra slid that USB across the cafe table, my mind was on fire with rage and possibility. But then something happened that caught me off guard. I sat down in my apartment, alone, no Rowan, no noise, and listened to that recording one more time. Myra's voice, Nolan's smug chuckle, the cold, casual way they talked about me like I was furniture to be removed. And I didn't feel hatred. I felt done. There's something terrifying and freeing about realizing you don't have to win. You just have to walk away intact. That was the real victory. Not revenge. Not making someone suffer. Just getting out of the fire without dragging it into the next room with you. So I built a backup folder. I sent one copy to a lawyer, just in case. One to Ezra. One to my sister. I kept one for myself. And then I blocked Mira. Everywhere. No dramatic exit. No cryptic messages. No slow fade. Just off. I returned the keys to the apartment. Let her keep the furniture. Let her sit in the curated life she designed for optics and sympathy and hollow praise from people who didn't know the whole story. I moved into a small one-bedroom 2 towns over. The kind of place with creaky floors and mismatched windows, but it was mine. I painted the walls. I filled the space with silence that didn't feel heavy. Rowan came by sometimes. We didn't start dating. We didn't try to turn trauma into romance. We just existed near each other, 2 people who'd seen the inside of the same kind of storm and knew better than to pretend we were healed just because it stopped raining. I went back to designing. Slowly. Quietly. No more skipping meals. No more apologizing for needing rest. I took walks. I wrote things I never showed anyone. I sent a message to Maylene, Nolan's wife, thanking her for her courage. She wrote back, simply, "You made it out. That's more than most." One night, weeks later, I found the coat. Myra's coat. The one I handed Nolan outside the gallery. It had been shoved in the back of my old closet, tags still on. I held it for a second. Then I folded it, bagged it, and dropped it off at a donation center without a note. Because some things don't need an audience. Some endings don't need applause. The truth is, Mira didn't break me. She just freed the part of me that stopped believing I was allowed to matter. And now? Now I know I do.